Hello, podcast listener. This is your host with the most, and I am thankful for you. Yes, even though it's a few weeks before Thanksgiving, I'm going to give you a menu. So if you're planning your first ever home cooked Thanksgiving meal, I've got it taken care of for you. And Tucker is going to help me get through all of the mishiga that is the Thanksgiving holiday. Sit back, relax, and enjoy this episode of JJ Meets World. And by the way, if you'd like to help support our podcast, visit jjmeetsworld.com where you can donate to our Patreon, pick up some killer swag at our merch shop, or click the link to Apple Podcast and give us a 5-star review.
1, 2, 3, 4. J.J. Gordon, sort of like that Indiana Jones, in that he's always sniffing out his next adventure. Yes, he is. He's always interviewing guests so he can have them on his show and they can talk about pop culture, arts, and leisure. J.J. has his flag unfurled and he likes his french fries curled, and he's fun and then he twirls as he goes to meet the world. He will march into the rain even if his ankle sprained. Take a peek inside his brain. This podcast is called J.J. Meets World.
Tucker, I thought I would put this together because I was recently re-listening to an old episode of JJ Meets World where I have an in-depth conversation about preparing a turkey. So I thought as a gift, as a Thanksgiving gift to the listeners of JJ Meets World, I will give you an entire Thanksgiving menu, recipes, ingredients, everything.
Oh.
So I've curated something that I feel is very special here.
So what you're saying is like this episode of JJ Meets World is sort of a Thanksgiving dinner how-to. If you'd rather, if you're looking for the spread, but you don't want to do all the figuring out what it should be, this is a one-stop shop.
I'm going to tell you that these are the recipes that are tried and true in my household. Everyone does stuff a little bit differently, but if you maybe we're saying, listen, we want to change things up a little bit this year, or we want to try a new recipe, or we want to try something that's different. This is a prime opportunity, and I get to share my love of cooking with the listeners of JJ Meets World. So I want to start with this. I want to talk about a turkey brine. Now, I'm not going to get too into the turkey because we've talked about this over time, and there's so many different ways. Some people pop it on a grill and tent it with foil. Some people believe in putting it in the bag and put the bag in the oven. There are people who believe in the spatchcock method where you split up the spine and actually grill it flat.
Yeah,
there's a lot of ways to cook a turkey.
Yeah, you got a
one thing that I think is really important is people should be brining their turkey. Now, that being said, almost all the frozen turkeys, so like if you buy a Butterball turkey, they already are brined to some extent. So they're already in kind of a salt bath before they put it, before they freeze it for you. And that helps retain flavor. But this is a pretty tried and true method. This is the brine that we use for our turkey. Now, this is something that you have to know. Rule of thumb, for every 5 pounds that your turkey weighs, it's going to take 1 day to thaw in the fridge. So if you've got a 15-pound turkey, that's 3 days worth of thawing before you even get it out to put it into your brine.
Mm.
So this brine is a mixture of sweet and savory, and I think that you're gonna dig it. So the first thing you're gonna do is you're gonna need these ingredients. It's 6 quarts of water, 1 pound of kosher salt, 1 cup of molasses, 2 cups honey. Now, if you can't come up with a molasses, just add an extra cup of honey, 1 cup soy sauce, 1 tablespoon dried red pepper flakes, 1 tablespoon dried sage, a bunch of fresh thyme if you've got it, or I would say, the inside of your palm's worth of dried thyme if you have it. 2 heads of garlic that you've broken up into individual cloves you've peeled and you've cut the tips off so that part of the garlic is actually exposed. 5 pounds of ice cubes, somewhere between, a 15 and 20 pound turkey, cleaned out. So you don't want the innards. You don't want like the neck or anything like that. It's just the bird itself. 1 pound of salted butter, and that's softened, and then 2 oranges. Okay.
Okay.
In a medium pot, you're going to bring 3 quarts of your water to a boil over medium heat. You're going to put the kosher salt in a large bowl and slowly pour into the boiling water so you can stir it. Then you're going to add the molasses, honey, the soy sauce, the red pepper flakes, the sage, the thyme, and the garlic to this salt and water mixture. Stir to blend it. Now you're not boiling it at this point. You're just trying to keep it so that everything dissolves. So salt and different things like the soy sauce will actually dissolve as the water gets hotter and then become more intense as it cools down. So bring it to the point of where everything's dissolved, remove it from the heat, let it stand for about an hour, and then add the ice. And so it kind of cools it down even more, because this is important. You don't want to put the turkey in anything that's warm, so it starts actually the cooking part of the turkey. It'll actually go bad. So you've got your brine and you've whisked all of these things together, and you're going to get yourself a food grade 5-gallon bucket. And if you've got a brine bag, that's great too. Some people have brine bags. Not everybody has one of those things. I buy a new bucket every single year, Tucker.
I only recently found out about these like gigantic food grade buckets, because I think it's like there's like a televangelist who like will sell buckets of like cheesy broccoli to doomsday preppers.
Really?
Yeah. So
there you go.
Consider some cheesy broccoli in a bucket. That's my suggestion for you for Thanksgiving. But back to what JJ was saying.
If you've already eaten the Lord's broccoli and you're done with it. So what you're going to do is you are going to then take the bird and you're going to submerge it, and you're going to put it breast side down. And this should completely cover the entire turkey. Okay. It should completely cover. And then you're going to want to cover up the top of that brine bucket. So I use a thing called press and seal that works pretty decently. I've seen people who put a garbage bag over the top. Essentially, you're just trying to keep foreign contaminants from getting inside of this thing. Then you want to put it in your garage, or if you've got a garage fridge, even better, put it in there, because it can't be at room temperature, but you also don't want it to freeze. So if it's really, really cold and you say, oh, I'm going to put it on the porch, and then you get a layer of ice around the top, that actually will keep it from brining completely, because the salt has to leach itself into the meat. So you're going to take it out, and you are going to pat it dry. You're going to kind of rinse it out and pat it dry. And then what you're going to do is you're going to take those oranges that you had, and you're going to cut them in half, and you're going to throw that into the cavity. So you're going to take that pound of butter that we had talked about that softened, and you're going to use that, and you're going to use your hands to separate the skin from the breast meat. So you're going to push your hands in there, and it feels like you're trying to get two plastic bags separated from in there. And don't worry if part of it, the skin breaks, it's no big deal, but you're going to work that butter inside between the skin and the breast. And then on the outside, use some poultry seasoning. I'm a big fan of, I use a little bit of salt, a little bit of pepper. I'll use a little bit of garlic salt, but I don't think that the skin itself needs that much, because what you're hoping is that as the bird cooks, any natural fats that exist are going to melt their way in and keep your bird nice and moist. This will also help with the moistness when it comes to cooking your turkey. So that's your brine. All right.
Okay.
And then, like I said, I'm not going to tell you how to cook your turkey. To each his own. That's just the way it is.
I mean, the way you're saying it, though, it sounds like, what you don't have to tell people how they should cook their turkey, but can you talk about how you cook yours?
Yeah. So when I do my turkey for Thanksgiving, I like to have the presentation of a fully cooked turkey. Otherwise, like if this were the middle of the summer, I would spatchcock it. It just cooks a little more evenly. It gets crispy. But I would take this out to my grill and I would roast it in my grill, checking it only twice, because every time you open that grill, you lose all the heat that's inside there.
Mm-hmm.
I am also a firm believer in using a meat thermometer. I use an awesome one called the Meater, MEATER. And what it does is it's got a little Bluetooth base that I put next to the grill. And it's actually what stores the meter in between. And then you put the probe into the turkey. And the meter takes the temperature not only inside the turkey where it's cooking, but also on the outside. So if the grill is at 325 degrees, it'll actually do all the math equations for you. And it'll tell you exactly when that turkey is going to be ready. And it tells you when it's going to be ready for you to take it off, because when you take the turkey off the grill, it can still raise another 5 to 10 degrees in temperature in ambient cooking, even though it's not on heat anymore. Just the natural, like essentially you've created this vacuum of heat inside the
Right.
turkey. And so that's how most people overcook, is they think, oh, I got it to 165 degrees, I'm good to go. And they pull the turkey off, and then all of a sudden it jumps itself up to 175 degrees. And now it's a little overdone, a little over, it gets to dry out a little bit. So the meter tells me everything. I have never ruined a piece of meat once I started using the meter. If you're an old school person, you've got your thermometer, just make sure you're checking for 160 degrees. I also do not stuff my turkey. I let those oranges that are on the inside essentially like steam up, and then the steam creates like a citrus, or the heat creates a citrus steam that goes into the breast meat. I think it's delicious. It's absolutely fantastic. And it's so salty at this point that you add that little bit of sweetness. So the honey and the orange really complement each other there. You can also throw an onion in there. I've also thrown a peeled apple. You really just want to take something that's very moisture rich, that as it heats up, it'll actually give off some wetness, some moisture when you put it in there. So I'm a grill kind of guy. I just like it on the grill. So the next thing I'm going to talk about is what I like to call Patty Gordon's raw stuffing.
Ooh, so I am so ready for this, because stuffing is, well, I struggle with this, but I'd say stuffing is probably my favorite dish at Thanksgiving.
Oh, it's fantastic. And it doesn't stuffing, like, that's the taste of Thanksgiving, isn't it?
It goes with everything that's on the plate. Everything that's on the plate.
Good.
It's so good.
And I'm going to blow your mind when I tell you about Thanksgiving waffles after this. Okay. So this is the way my mom has always done stuffing. And the big difference is that I actually don't like, right? Not that I don't like, I don't prefer baked stuffing. I actually prefer this raw stuffing that is uncooked when it comes down to it. And I've got a couple of my friends who join us for Thanksgiving every year to kind of come along with this. So I still do a dish of baked stuffing nonetheless, just because I know everyone likes it their way. But this is the way I do it. Now, my wife's family does it in a crock pot, and I think it becomes sludge. I can't stand it. And she can't stand my raw stuffing. So why did we even get married? I don't know. Sometimes
there's no happy medium here, JJ.
There's none.
You can't
There's no middle ground.
You got your cooked stuffing and my raw stuffing. You got your raw stuffing on my cooked stuffing.
I wish it was as simple as the peanut butter and chocolate analogy. Unfortunately, it is truly the type of thing where it's like, I want her to have to serve my mom's raw stuffing recipe at my funeral because I know it would piss her off. Right? So you are going to take 1 loaf of white bread, 1 loaf of wheat bread, and you're going to cut those. Now, I use my carving knife, my electric carving knife, to cut it into my own breadcrumbs. I do not allow them to go stale. They still retain like kind of their freshness. You pop those into a gigantic mixing bowl. An entire head of celery. You're going to chop this up, and you don't need to make little tiny celery bits. I think, if you get them that's probably 1/4 of an inch thick, you're going to be good to go as you chop those along. And then you're going to get 2 large yellow onions. So I use a yellow onion versus a white onion because there's a different flavor profile with a yellow onion. I think it's a little bit sweeter. And so you are going to chop those things up, and you can chop these not to fine, not to minced, but to chopped, so that I could actually stab one of these onions with a fork and be able to take it up easily. You pop those all into the bowl. You're going to mix it around a little bit so everything gets mixed. You're going to take 1 pound of butter, and you are going to melt it in the microwave. I melt it in a clear measuring, like a measuring cup. And like we have a big glass one that I use for this. And then you're going to start with 3 tablespoons of sage, and you're going to mix that in. Now, the color you are looking for here for your sage butter mixture is Hulk green. Okay. I know that it's a very specific green. I think you'd see it if you're like, oh, okay, it shouldn't be too dark, but it shouldn't be too light. If you are not someone who enjoys sage, and this is a ground sage we're talking about, then you can back it off a little bit, but I still recommend using that amount of butter because you've got an aggressive amount of bread and onion and celery in there. Add salt to it. I use a flaky kosher salt. I think they're bigger salt flakes, and I just think that they taste better when you're doing this because it's not fine ground. And I don't think like the fine ground hits one piece of bread and then that's the only place it is. And then you get one really salty piece and then nothing else gets it. And then you're going to add pepper to taste as well, whisk that up, and then you're going to slowly drizzle that over the top of this, mix around the mixture, drizzle again, mix around the mixture. You're going to drizzle again, mix around the mixture, drizzle again, mix around the mixture. You do this a day in advance. Put a drying cloth or some kind of tinfoil, even cover over the top of this, and so overnight you get a little bit of the staleness. And so that's where you get that kind of the breadcrumminess of this. And then the next day you can serve it either way. You can serve it just straight up raw stuffing. You can also pop it into an oven, 325 degrees for 30 minutes. Will give you a nice crusty top on it. That butter will brown everything and it's going to be really nice. You'll enjoy it. And then you can add more salt and pepper as you like. I also know people like in my family who love sausage stuffing. And so the only difference I would make is I'll actually chop up smoked sausage and add it just before I pop it into the oven. So the smoked sausage is pre-cooked, so I don't have to worry about it having to actually go through a cooking process, and it adds an extra oomph to it. Now, that's a little more Southern than my taste. I think that, to me, the turkey is the king of the proteins when it comes to Thanksgiving, but it's pretty, it's pretty good. It does what it needs to do. Let me ask you a question, Tucker. When it comes to mashed potatoes, you are a connoisseur.
I'm Irish.
You are. You're an Irish man who loves his taters.
God, and I should make some mashed taters tonight. Now that you're even saying that, there's something that is so pure and perfect about a good mashed potato, right? Listening to you talk all this food has got me so hungry.
Has it? We've primed the pump for you.
It's too bad that we can't pair like a smell-o-vision service with our podcast, because
oh god,
imagine someone listening to it and be able to smell all this amazing food. It's like that. Do you ever have that like Teddy Ruxpin toy? You ever see those commercials where it was like you could watch a TV show with Teddy Ruxpin and he'll say certain things? Yeah. It's sort of like that.
But in this case, Teddy Ruxpin would give off the smell of butter and roasting vegetables.
Yeah, yeah. So you were going to ask me about mashed potatoes. What's the question?
So when it comes to mashed potatoes, how do you like, I think that there's two types of mashed potatoes. There's the thick mashed potatoes that usually have like a skin on, which is, I mean, essentially, if you gave someone a baked potato and a fork and said, mash this up, that's the kind of the consistency you'd get. And then there's also the very creamy mashed potatoes that, could slide itself off of a fork. It's not going to necessarily stick there, but it's smoother and creamier. Do you have a preference in either direction?
My preference is for the heartier, less creamy, more thick. I really like making mashed potatoes with the skins on it.
Oh, good.
Usually when I'm making mashed potatoes, it's, a couple of potatoes in there plus, salt, butter, and I put some olive oil in there too. And then at some point I'll take it once I know the mashed potatoes are good to go, like, hey, these are ready. I'll take them off the heat and then I'll immediately start shaving in some extra sharp cheddar cheese, just a little bit, and mix that up and let the heat of the potatoes just melt it and keep mixing it until the potatoes have just a very slight orange tinge to them. Not a lot, not like super cheesy potatoes, just a little bit. JJ, it's so good.
And letting that influence the flavor without it being the dominant flavor.
Yeah.
Great choice. Yeah. I love all of these choices you're making. I am a Red River Valley red potato kind of guy.
Yes,
those
sir.
are my favorite kind of potatoes.
Me too.
And I quarter those things up. I leave the skins on. I pop them into the pot. I do not totally submerge them in water. It's not like they're like, floating around and there's a lot of space.
Okay.
I let plenty of, there's enough water in there to cook them.
Sure.
but there's not enough water in there to like, let them move around a lot. And so I boil them until they're soft, but not mushy. I pop them out. I actually pull them out with like a rice cooker, like kind of like a thing, because that potato water I set to the side. That potato water is great for keeping for other things. So like if your gravy becomes too runny, this is a very starch heavy liquid that you can add in there to thicken up things.
Sure. That makes sense.
And I also make a thing called Thanksgiving soup. And so I use that water for that as well. So I hold on to the pot that's got the water from the potatoes, and I pop them into my mixer, and I immediately throw a full stick of butter in there, and I let the mixer go. And I'm only looking to roughly chop up these potatoes, right? Like you can pick out chunks of potatoes in this, but it's not lumpy. I add a little salt. I add a little pepper. I usually add a little bit of minced garlic while it's in there. And then I pop it out. And what I do is I take Parmesan cheese that you get like in the deli, like the grated, not the powdery stuff, but the grated Parmesan cheese you can get.
Yeah.
And I throw a little of that over the very top of this, and it doesn't form like a crust, but when you put the spoon in, you can see that there's a little something on the top, right?
Yeah.
And then I like to serve potatoes with a little pat of butter that's melting right on the top. And I think it looks just fantastic. And what are mashed potatoes without, I don't know, gravy, right?
Yep, absolutely.
Classic turkey gravy.
Here's actually the thing though about that those cheddar potatoes I was talking about.
Yeah.
Is that they go great with or without gravy.
Oh, lovely.
So they're actually really, really nice if you're like, I want, it's like a quick potato meal with your protein or whatever. Just like you're like, I'm not going to make gravy just for this one meal, me eating this one plate. But so just shave some cheddar in there and let it just at the very end when it's just the heat of the potatoes themselves, not like being cooked that way. So they're not like melting and getting crispy and stuff.
I love a meal with we make a mashed potato and meatball meal that I love lately that doesn't need any gravy, right? Like that's the beauty of it. These two flavors influence each other so well. But when it comes to Thanksgiving, I love the fact that everything on my plate can be gravied. I can put it on the mashed potatoes. I can put it on the stuffing. I can put it on the green bean casserole. I'm putting it on the turkey. Heck, if it touches my cranberry sauce, I'm not disappointed.
That's where I draw the line. That's where we differ. I really feel very strongly about my sweets and my savories like being separate. So I love cranberries, but I'll have them on a separate plate. So they're not
separate plate, huh?
Full separate plates. They're not getting mixed with gravy. But everything else you mentioned, I want gravy on it. Like I think I want to take a nice big piece of, white turkey meat and dip it in my potatoes and gravy and maybe get some stuffing in there all on one fork and go nuts about it. And I don't know how often you do this for your Thanksgivings, but hopefully at some point you'll bring dumplings into the picture because dumplings are my absolute favorite Thanksgiving food.
And I hate to admit this, but because I don't have any Southern heritage, dumplings have never had a place. But I desperately want them. Like the other day, I was thinking about your grandmother's chicken and dumplings, and that's all I wanted. I was like, this is a perfect fall meal. I wish I had it right now.
Yeah. In fact, I know Dad's got the recipe that Mama Luke followed, and that's just something that I should really get a hold of and go, hey, maybe that'll be one of my goals this winter is like, I'm going to teach myself how to do this.
Oh, I think that's a great idea.
I want this in my life,
Okay, so for this turkey gravy, it's a little more involved. And I know there's some people who are like, listen, I open up a jar of gravy and I'm good to go. And that, more power to you. I use a seasoning packet and I'm done. This gravy is to die for. I double the recipe immediately. I don't even start low. So this is what we're going to do. We're talking about 2 tablespoons of butter, a medium size onion, or I've been using a couple, 2 or 3 shallots lately. You're going to want to use the giblets from the turkey, but not the liver. This is important. So the heart is in there, but not the liver. And if you are like me, you're okay sacrificing the neck as part of this gravy instead of using it like cooking it inside the bird. Then you're going to want to get 8 cups of chicken broth, and then a small handful of thyme, parsley, sage, and a bay leaf. Then this is for a broth that you're going to make. And then the broth turns into the gravy. You're going to use some of the drippings from your roasting pan, a half a cup of all-purpose flour, a dash of Worcestershire sauce, kosher salt and ground pepper. And then you're going to do this. When your turkey goes in the oven, you're going to start making your broth. Melt the butter in the large saucepan over about medium heat. You don't want it on super high because you're working with butter and it's got a lower smoke threshold. You're going to add the turkey neck and giblets minus the liver again, as well as the onion. You're going to cook, stirring. The giblets are browned. It's probably about 15 minutes. Then you want to add the chicken broth, the herbs, and the bay leaf. Cover and simmer while the turkey roasts, about 2 hours. We're talking turn this on the lowest heat absolutely possible and just let it cook there and bubble every now and then, stir it around. Some of these things will break down, like the turkey neck, like bits will break off of that, and don't worry about that. That's just fine. And then you're going to strain the broth and keep it warm. So the way you're going to strain it is like this. You're going to take a big bowl and you are going to use a strainer and strain everything out so that any of the bones from the neck that are in there, the bay leaf, those are all going to end up in your strainer. So then when your turkey's done, you want to get it onto a cutting board, and then you've got your pan with the drippings, and you want to put it into a degreasing cup. And if you've never seen this before, it's a cup that actually separates the grease part of it from the stuff that's actually the good drippings. Now, you can also do this if you're diligent by using, like a spoon and kind of dipping underneath to the bottom part. You just don't want it to be all fat. Like, that's not good if it's all fat. So you're going to add a half a cup of the broth to the roasting pan, and then you can scrape up the brown bits at the bottom of the roasting pan. I mean, you're going to love it. It's just awesome. And then you take that same pan that you've cooked it on, or if you cooked it in an aluminum pan, you can transfer that right over into like another saucepan, and you're going to start cooking those things all together. So you want to get all of the little crusty parts that are on the bottom of the pan where you cooked the turkey and all that kind of stuff. Now, if you have a huge amount of drippings, if you cooked a 22-pound turkey, you do not need all those drippings. It'll actually end up overtaking the gravy that we're going to create here. So you can take the fat that has risen to the top of the degreasing cup and then take that off and transfer what you've got left to the saucepan, or your new saucepan, over medium heat. And you're going to make what's called a roux, which is a very basic like French sauce. It's one of the most basic sauce. You're going to sprinkle the flour into the pan, cook, stirring constantly with your spoon until the flour browns slightly, about 4 minutes. And then you're gradually going to add the hot broth into your roux, and you're whisking constantly, because that's the thing, is gravy can clump. So this is the one part where someone's sole job should be in charge of the gravy, as you add these things together so that they can simmer and come together. Once you add everything together, you're going to simmer, but you're whisking, and then it's going to take about 10 minutes. As it cooks, it'll actually thicken up. And if it's not thick enough, you might consider adding a little bit of that that potato water we talked about. Mm-hmm. And then you want to taste it before you put it into a gravy boat. Does it need salt? If it's too salty, you can add more chicken broth to it, because that, especially if you're using a low sodium chicken broth, that'll actually cut away some of the saltiness. But it should be thick enough that if you were to put your finger in it and pull it out, it would coat your finger. Now, there's also the skin that ends up on the top of the gravy. So this should be the last thing that you put into a gravy bowl and get out there and get people pouring it out so that you don't see that weird gravy skin, because there's nothing that is appetizing when it comes to gravy skin. In fact, my grandfather, there's a story of my great grandfather, and he showed up really late to Christmas dinner one year because he had been at the bar drinking with his buddies. And my great grandmother was like, "You're drunk." And he was, "Yeah, and your mother's skin on the gravy." And I don't know what that was supposed to, I don't know why that's a dig, but it lived in Gordon history for a long time as one of the coolest things that was ever said at the table.
Your mother's skin on the gravy?
Yeah, your
That-
mother's skin on the gravy.
That's such a great line.
Yeah, right?
That's got to be the podcast title for this episode.
When it comes to green bean casserole, I just don't think that you want to ruin something that is so simple. It's a recipe that is just so easy. It is 1 can of cream of mushroom soup to 2 cans of French style green beans drained. Mix those together, and then you put French's fried onions on the top. Pop it in the oven at 350 degrees, maybe 30 minutes or until it's browned at the top. Boom, it's done. That is it. And it's got great flavor. It's a great complement to everything we're going to eat here, because you could take a forkful of this and include it with your potatoes, and it's good to go. Get a little gravy on it. It's going to be fine. You can use a little like a little bun, like a little dinner roll to like get some of the like creaminess of that's there. And then it stores beautifully. Like you can have it the next day and it heats up just fine. I think people go really fancy with this and make their own green, their own crispy onions. There are people who add, porcini mushrooms in here, and more power to you. I'm so glad that that's the way you do it. But if I'm going to make it, I'm going to use classic. I'm using those French cut green beans. I'm using Campbell's cream of mushroom soup. I'm not going to go above and beyond. In fact, one year I used the cream of mushroom and garlic, and I thought to myself, oh my God, this is the worst thing you could have ever done. You've ruined the holiday. Luckily, no one else said that. It was just me who had that opinion at that time.
I think it's a shame that green bean casserole is the only food that really tends to get that French's onion on top of it, because that should be on everything on the plate.
It is so good, isn't it? And you know what?
And it's the only part of that dish that I like.
French's is an odd company because they're like, hey, we do onions really well, but also we got mustard. And I think to myself that French's also does the fried onions best. At like a big box store like Costco, they've got an off-brand gigantic bag of fried onions, and you're like, oh, a fried onion's a fried onion. It is not. The French's are the key. And the thing that I like the most about the French's now that I'm an adult is they come in a little plastic container that, what do I say? Well, for you, it's about half the size of a VHS tape, about half the width, or it's about half the length of a VHS tape and the exact width of one. And it's got a plastic top on it. And I use it for sorting screws and nuts and bolts now.
You know how in Tillamook, Oregon?
Yeah.
How you can go to the Tillamook cheese factory and
you're the second person to talk to me about this today.
And you can watch them like make cheese, right, and ice cream and stuff. And then you keep going through the tour, and then you go into a grocery store that actually is just nothing but their products. So you can always, they've got like everything there. And then you walk through that, and then you get to this massive restaurant where all of the food on there, like all the cheeses, is all made from their own cheese. French's should do that, but just for bloomin' onions.
Oh my God. Did you just come up with a genius idea like right here, right now? Did this just happen live on our podcast?
I think so, man. I think French's needs to do that. I would go, but you would struggle there, buddy, because there would be so much mustard in the air.
Yeah. Oh my God. It would be horrible. I'd have to wear a mask the entire time.
Someone else brought up Tillamook today?
Yeah, you're the second person. The first person was a guy who was hosting another show who's talking about, and if you've never been, you got to go to the Tillamook cheese, cheese experience.
Have you ever been there?
I have not.
I have, and it was pretty great. But the whole town smells like cow. It's crazy. So like clearly they have a lot there. But and then I had a cheesesteak while I was there. And the cheese was really good on the cheesesteak, but it was like a roast beef sandwich, basically, unfortunately.
Interesting.
Yeah. So last thing we left off on was green bean casserole. Are there more savories to go through?
Oh, yes. In fact, the next one is a much more this is probably the most like hoity-toity thing that's on my menu. But you just can't go wrong with balsamic roasted Brussels sprouts.
Oh, I'd try that.
One thing that's nice about these is it adds a pop of color to your plate. So the green of the Brussels sprouts is a real welcome addition, because most things on a Thanksgiving plate are yellow, tan, brown. There's just not a lot of like color appearing on top of your plate. So for this, you're going to need about 1.5 pounds of Brussels sprouts. You're going to want to trim and cut the half through the course.
I love how devoted to pageantry you are, even at Thanksgiving.
Oh, Thanksgiving pageants, like this is pageantry is every part of the Thanksgiving holidays pageants. And then you want 4 ounces of pancetta, which is about 1/4 inch dice. Now, are you asking yourself, what is pancetta, JJ? I've never heard of that before. Are you that person?
Oh, sure. Why does
okay?
Sorry, hold on. But JJ, what is pancetta? I have never heard of that before.
I'm so glad that you asked. Pancetta, you might know as a type of pork belly. Pork belly is the same area where bacon comes from. Pancetta specifically is it's a really fatty, flavorful part of pork. And it's very popular in Italy. They add it to soups and pastas. I mean, this is a way that they get like an amazing flavor. It just like, it looks gross when you see it, but trust me, this is like, they're like flavor cubes. You're going to love that. And again, you only need 4 ounces and you're going to get into about 1/4 inch dice size, 1/4 cup of good olive oil. Not all olive oil is made the same. And some of my favorite olive oil ever, Tucker, actually came from your dad.
Really?
There was some teacher who imported a bunch of olive oil and he was able to buy like a big glass container of it. And I think he bought several, and he gave me one. It doesn't have like a bitter taste to it. It's just good olive oil. And when you pour it, it's thick. It doesn't have a lot of like little granules or anything in it. It's just good. There are good olive oils, and there are just like, this is an oil that happens to be called olive. And so if you're going to invest in one thing, I highly recommend investing in things like olive oil or the balsamic vinegar that we're going to talk about. There are a couple little things that by spending an extra $1 or $2 when you buy these, and they last a long time. I mean, you could buy a bottle of olive oil that'll last you a year for a couple dollars more.
Damn.
It's going to take your cooking to the next level. I mean, It is going to be just awesome. In our part of the world, canola oil is really big, and I think canola oil is great if I'm frying something, but it's not great when I'm just like cooking in this circumstance. So then you're also going to use some more kosher salt and ground black pepper. Here's also a tip when it comes to black pepper. If you buy the pepper grinder and you see the peppercorns in there, inside peppercorns is oil, a small amount of oil. And when you crack open the pepper, it releases that natural oil. And that's why fresh ground black pepper tastes different than coarse ground black pepper that's sitting like it's on the table at a restaurant. What I did was a couple of years ago, I went to a thrift store and I bought a coffee grinder, and I just throw a bunch of peppercorns in there and I do a couple like meep, 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 and it grinds all of these peppercorns and it's fresh. It has changed the way I cook. It's awesome. And you can get a grinder for maybe $10 on Amazon. But once you start getting into grinding your own peppercorns, because then you're going to find out that not all peppercorns are the same. Again, it just changes the dynamic of the things that you cook. And the last thing is you need a tablespoon of syrupy balsamic vinegar. At the grocery store, they have really leaned into the fact that, yes, people know the difference between just a balsamic sauce and a balsamic vinegar. You're looking for a thick, probably maple syrup thick balsamic vinegar. Now, with balsamic vinegar, hold on, I want to get this right because you are looking for a specific word on it that's going to make it better. And I got to get the exactly one. I wanted to say like it was Moderna, but that's not. That is the shot.
Are you sure it's not Pfizer?
No, I'm positive. You want balsamic vinegar of Modena, Moden. Okay. So it's cheaper mass-produced balsamic vinegars are often labeled as balsamic vinegar of Modema, which is an inexpensive modern imitation of the traditional product. So you want to find the one that says like, like it is a Modena traditional style balsamic vinegar. And they're easy to find. You can find them on Amazon. You can find them in grocery stores. I found mine at Target, but it does make a big difference. So here's what you're going to do. Preheat your oven to 400 degrees. Place the Brussels sprouts on a sheet pan, not a baking dish, a sheet pan, including some of the loose leaves, which are going to get nice and crispy when they're roasted. You're going to add the pancetta, the olive oil, and 1.5 teaspoons of salt, a half a teaspoon of pepper, and you're going to toss with your hands. Just get them all over the place. Get yourself nice and greasy. Then spread it out in a single layer. Roast the Brussels sprouts for 20 to 30 minutes until they're tender and they're going to be nicely browned, and that pancetta is going to be cooked. The fat's going to melt away and just leave the flavor and that little bit of pork that's left. You're going to toss once during roasting, so you're going to take it out and you're going to toss it around. You're going to, if you have any extra drizzle, you can do that. Or I'm sorry, not drizzle. If you have any extra from like your collection when you're making this little sauce with the olive oil, you're going to remove from the oven, and then you're going to drizzle immediately with balsamic vinegar and then toss again. You're going to do a light drizzle over the top, toss it, and then decide if it needs more. This is totally to your taste. I know people who love to put a ton of balsamic on there, and I know some who like a simple drizzle is more than enough for them. This dish has been such a hit at the last couple of Thanksgivings that I've done. It will definitely be on my menu for a long time. And again, it's a green. It adds something different. It's a different flavor profile for it. I will say this, though. It does not save as well as everything else does.
Okay.
So whatever you have left, you probably want to eat it in the next day or so, or it starts to get bitter the longer after it's been cooked that it cools and saves down there. This is just a last minute. I like Pillsbury, the Pillsbury biscuits. I think are just fine. The Grand's biscuits.
Oh, you're talking more like savory biscuits, right?
Yeah, I mean, yeah. I like, it's just, you want some kind of a bread. And to me, like Pillsbury's done it. They've got a great thing going. I buy 3 containers of those. I bake the biscuits. I could even make the biscuits ahead of time if I want, and then just throw back in the oven to warm up a little bit. But I don't think it needs anything that's particularly great. One year I did biscuits 3 ways. And one way was I brushed the top with butter and I added a little garlic salt to some. I added some like savory kind of Thanksgiving herbs. So like the thyme and the sage to another. And then another one is I hit with a little bit of chili powder. So there were kind of some spicy biscuits. The spicy biscuits, huge hit. Like people wanted that more than anything because there is nothing when it comes to a Thanksgiving table that usually has spice associated with it, like a heat kind of spicy. And so people were really into that. This next recipe is, I know that there are people out there who have a firm tradition, and I say go for it, but this is my recipe for a cranberry dish. And this one specifically is cranberry orange. And if you remember in my turkey, I put that orange in there. And so it complements the turkey and the citrus, kind of the light citrus taste you get from that. You're going to get 2 8-ounce packages of cranberries. You can get them fresh or frozen right around Thanksgiving. You can always find fresh cranberries. 1 orange. You're going to zest like a bunch of the peel, and then you're going to juice it. So you're just going to juice it by hand. You're going to get a 1/2 cup of sugar and 1 cinnamon stick. You're going to put all the ingredients into a saucepan over medium heat and simmer until the cranberries burst and then the sauce thickens. Have you ever cooked cranberries before?
No, I've never had to. When you started saying, "Hey, here's a recipe for cranberry sauce," I was so ignorant. My first thought was like, wait, it doesn't just come that way?
Yeah, and like, I don't get me wrong, I loved canned cranberries, and I think that they've got a place too. But if you're looking to like, if someone says, "Oh, bring cranberries," because they think that you are the garbage person who doesn't know how to cook, this is incredibly easy because all you like, literally, you just put it all into a saucepan, medium heat. You're going to simmer. And then the cranberries burst open on their own. And it's not like they burst and splatter everywhere. They just kind of like open up as they cook. They, because it's like they're like little water balloons that are just bursting. And it takes about 15 to 20 minutes. The sauce itself is going to thicken. And then all you have to do is take it off the heat and then put it into some kind of a dish that you're going to serve it out of, put it into a Tupperware. It doesn't matter. You serve it at room temperature or cool. Some people like to warm it up. That's more power to you. That's great. You want to remove the cinnamon stick before serving. You show up and they're expecting canned cranberries and you bring this and they're going to be like, damn, we underestimated Tucker. I guess we should have been more supportive of him in the past in all of his endeavors.
No, I mean, I don't think it would have been an underestimation. I think it would have been like, no, Tucker clearly has grown in his abilities because due to all historical data, this should not have happened.
Right. And again, if you're somebody who makes a delicious canned cranberry and you get it out there and you get all the rings, like another pro tip, open the top of the can and then use an old fashioned can opener to puncture a hole in the bottom. And then it'll slide right out because there's no suction anymore holding it in there. The air actually will help move it right out. So
would that be good on, would that go well on vanilla ice cream?
Oh my God, it'd be so good. That's the thing is cranberries are so tart. It is the rhubarb of the winter.
Mm-hmm.
It's just delightful. Now, let's say you've had a delicious meal and it's time for a dessert, right? I think that pumpkin pie is the prince, right?
Yes.
And here's the other thing. You know what? Costco does pumpkin pie perfectly. I don't think that there is a better pumpkin pie. And for like $3.99, you get a 4-pound pie.
Ooh.
Right? Like, don't worry about it. Now, where you can like amp it up is if you've never made your own homemade whipped topping, your own like version of Cool Whip, all you need is heavy whipping cream, some powdered sugar, and a mixer, and you can make the most amazing homemade whipped cream. It is so good, and it's super easy. Or just get a can of Cool, or get a little like tub of Cool Whip. You're good to go. Now, you can also save the Cool Whip tubs for the shed. That's another great thing to take out to the shed because you can sort things like screw tips and bits in those because they're larger. The next day, I would like to recommend that you try this. If you have a waffle maker at your house, take your stuffing and put it on the bottom part of a waffle maker and close it the way you'd make a normal set of waffles. It's going to cook and it's going to like sizzle, and there's plenty of butter, especially in the stuffing that I make, that'll actually brown and cook. Pop those out, and now you've got stuffing that is hot and crispy in the shape of a waffle. You're going to take some shredded turkey. You're going to take a dollop of mashed potatoes. You're going to put maybe a little bit of that green bean hot dish on there, and then you're going to use some gravy instead of maple syrup, and boom, brother, you have got what I call Thanksgiving waffles. It is the best next day use of your leftovers. It is friggin' phenomenal. It has changed my life how much I love these things. I used to be the king of turkey sandwiches for the next couple of days. I make 3 of these like crispy waffle stuffing waffles, and my God, it is so out of this world effing good. I frigging love it.
Yeah, that sounds amazing.
Yeah, I should have you over for Thanksgiving waffles this year. I think you'll enjoy it.
I would want to. Yeah, say no more.
Then on top of that, you know, most people end up with the bones of the turkey. I always make a stock out of the turkey, and to make turkey stock, which you can turn into turkey soup, you can do a lot of stuff with it over the winter months. Is I grab my biggest pot and I put enough water in there to cover the bones of the turkey. So this is all the bones that are left over. I pull all the meat off of it. If there's little bits of meat on it, don't worry. And then I rough cut like 2 onions. I rough cut some carrots and some celery. They call it mirepoix. I throw some salt and pepper in there, some parsley, and essentially I let this boil for up to like 5 hours. And what you're doing is you're boiling down, and it's at a low, you bring to a boil and then let it simmer at this temperature, but you're boiling the flavor out of the bones, and it's making that water now a really rich, thick stock. So if you want to turn it into soup, you've got a great stock for soup. When you're sick, sometimes I just warm this up, and this is the meal I can eat because it's nice and light and tender for me. I'm telling you, it is amazing. So don't throw away that turkey, those turkey bones, if you think that you have a second use. Now, I'm going to warn you, one year I was like, I don't have enough room in my fridge. You know what I'm going to do is I'm going to put my turkey carcass on the porch and I'll just put it in a garbage bag, and then and like a clean garbage bag. And then tomorrow I'll pop it out. Went out to get the clean garbage bag. And I noticed that the bag itself was moving a little bit. A squirrel had chewed his way in and was having a delightful Thanksgiving feast of my leftover turkey. And I was a super sad panda. It was horrific, Tucker. It was just awful. So I will never make that mistake again.
Yeah.
Also, Thanksgiving leftover soup is great. Like I will use that potato water. And I'll add that in there. I'll chunk up the turkey meat. I can throw the stuffing in there, and it becomes like it's somewhere between soup and stew, like an AJ, right? Like stoop. Mm-hmm. It's an in-betweeny kind of thing. But it tastes really just great. And every now and then I make enough where I can freeze it in little like quarts and pints. And so throughout the winter, I can pull that out and like have a taste of Thanksgiving left. Thanksgiving's my favorite meal of the year. I like it because people get together. There's really food is the main, like is the centerpiece of this holiday. You don't have to worry about gifts. You don't have to worry about going to church. You don't have to worry about, like anything. Plus you get to watch planes, trains, and automobiles while you make this meal. It is perfect. It is just absolutely perfect.
Does that movie take place at Thanksgiving?
It is. In fact, Paramount, if you're listening, I'm very mad because whoever did the cover art for you on like the last couple of re-releases of Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, they have made it with like a North Pole and like they've got gifts at their feet. And I'm like, he's getting home for Thanksgiving, not for Christmas, you dumb sons of bitches. It makes me really angry. I'm like, do you know nothing? Did nobody even bother to watch this before you threw some shitty clip art on the cover? So yes, he's trying to get home for Thanksgiving, which is another reason why I think that movie is a perfect choice, because if he was trying to make it home for Christmas, I think you'd find people would be a little kinder, the sweetness of the season, so to speak.
Right.
But because John Hughes picked Thanksgiving, it's not a holiday that brings out the best in everyone, right? Like it's a time to get together for family, but you don't think of like the magic of Thanksgiving.
I mean, yeah, it's just more. I do think of home for the holidays kind of a thing. Going home, just having a meal at home is what I think of it as. But beyond that, that's about it.
This is something that makes me sad. I'm a member of the Fargo Moorhead Eats page on Facebook, which is a gigantic group of people who ask things about like, hey, where can you get French's fried onions? Or is this anything? But a previous podcast guest just posted any FM area restaurants doing 2023 Thanksgiving buffet. And like, they're like, yeah, the Frying Pan is, the Holiday Inn, the Chinese buffets will be open. And it makes me want to call this person and be like, listen, you and your hubby just come on over to my place. I'll make you the best buffet you've ever eaten, and you don't have to do any of the dishes.
Oh, there you go. That's kind of
it's
a Thanksgiving miracle, JJ.
It is a Thanksgiving miracle. Okay, Tucker, that does it for my Thanksgiving menu. I hope that there's something in there that everyone can enjoy. And if you need to re-listen to this episode over and over and over again, I think that's awesome, because I put a lot of effort into these choices.
I think I'm going to go make some mashed potatoes.
Lovely. Skin on, baby. That's going to wrap it up for today's show. If you enjoyed this episode and would like to help us continue to produce new episodes each week, visit jjmeetsworld.com, where you can donate to our Patreon, pick up some swag at the merch shop, or follow our link to Apple Podcasts and leave us a 5-star review. You can also follow us on social media. We're on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, all the sites the cool kids are using these days. JJ Meets World is produced every week by Tucker Lucas. You can find out more about Tucker's work by visiting moonbasemaria.com. If you want to get in touch with your host with the most, check out linebenders.com, where you can find direct contact info for JJ or booking information. The thing is that I once ate a whole turkey by myself while watching a turkey out the window.